Sit!
Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
Hey, hey.
He's Garret Price.
Yeah, how's it going?
And it's gobble, gobble, gobble bitches week. Turkey week, friends.
It sure is, man.
Favorite weekend of the year, favorite holiday of the year. We got 3 games on Thursday. We got a game on Friday. We got rivalry week in college football where Ohio State gets a bang up on the team up north. And then we got games on Sunday. And then my team that's supposed to be a team plays on Monday night. So we have...
They got a dub on last Thursday.
Yeah, that's fine. Funnest football game ever. One of the funnest football games I've ever been to.
How cold was it?
Not that cold.
I was going to say, I don't think it was that cold. It was like right on the border.
32.
Was it almost better than it being 35 and like rainy and nasty?
Dude, a billion. Dude, the view, it was fun because of the snow. Yeah, it was like literally in a snow globe. It's the coolest snow game I've ever been to in my life. It was just a flirt, like literally like in snow.
That was like the first snow we've had this year too, wasn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And
Dude, at my house, I got like 6 inches of snow.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Dang.
Okay.
Lake effect.
Yeah. We get pounded where I'm at.
Yeah.
Nice. 6 inches pounded. Ooh, good stuff. And it was fun. I mean, I
see you even turn snow dirty.
That's what I do. It's literally something that goes through my head all day.
Dang it, I only got a dusting.
Crop dusting. And it's been doing it for 11 years on this podcast, 45 years of my life.
I don't even know I have children.
It helps when you're a snowboarder. You always have the gear to.
You're ready.
I'm always ready. Like cold. There's like Alexa texted me. She's like, "Oh, it's gonna be so cold." I'm like, "If you are prepared, nothing's cold."
That's right.
Like, yeah, you
You stay ready. Clothes. You ain't got to get ready.
That's I like that. Put that on a shirt. Tattoo that. Might took us.
That's a pretty.
Put that on my.
That's a pretty popular saying, Rich.
Yeah, probably, but
he's still
really hitting this moment.
I literally already forgot what he said. I'm not even being facetious. I totally forgot. If you told me to quote you for word right now,
try. What did I say? What did I say?
Stay ready, be ready.
You had some of the 30%. Right words. You had some of the right words. Nice words.
I knew the
if
word.
You stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
Stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of that sweet saying Matt had back in the day. They had to remind him. Yeah, I can't remember.
Right. I couldn't remember my own words from like the day before.
And I couldn't even tell you one word.
That's like Marshawn Lynch. What was that time? He said something like really astute. And someone was like, wow, what was that? Can you say that again? He's like, I don't know. This is just coming off the dome. You should write this down. Like,
yeah, dude, I just talk. I don't remember anything. Like, it's bad. My wife was like, my wife was like, I had to tell her yesterday. She's like, you just stop listening. I was like, no, I just have bad hearing. Like, you don't understand. I was like, wife, do you understand like how many times people talk to me and I literally just smile and say yeah, and I have no idea what they said?
In one ear, out the other.
Yeah, like I do that. I have such a bad habit of doing. Like I do that all the time. People say stuff to me, I have no idea what they said, and I smile and say, "Oh yeah," and I just say, "Yeah." They get
awkward chuckle.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna stab you in the throat." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, cool." Like, yeah. I'm just so bad at that.
Yeah,
it's like people introduce themselves, they'll tell me their name, and 30 seconds later, like I have no idea what this guy said.
There have been times at the show you guys have been talking. I've been doing something completely different and just trying to like research something, and then you guys are. And I'm like,
hey guys.
Yes,
shoot, what name did they just say?
Yeah, no, I'm with you guys.
Well, we're back. We have a rebuild episode for today's show. We're going to talk about some rebuilding strategies, when to do it, how to do it, maybe some players to target. And, of course, we're doing, for the rest of the year, we're doing shirt giveaways or something out of our team store that's comparable. You know, we gave away one of the guys who won last week wanted a beanie, which was nice. So we sent him a beanie, and another person got a Seahawks shirt. So all you got to do is leave a rating or review either on the Dynasty app, the Dynasty GM app in your app store, or leave a rating and review on the podcast.
That's right.
I would appreciate it if everybody goes leave a podcast review. Even if you already did, just refresh it, which will also get you back into the entry as well. Because we had somebody very nefariously go into our podcast feed and
talking about like betting and stuff.
Yeah, leave 1-star reviews on things that had nothing to do with our show. So it's obviously just an attack. So anybody who wants to refresh their review, just send them to look at that. I would appreciate that. Well, and if you have a chance to get a Dynasty Nerd shirt, this week's winner is, I pulled it from the app review. Next week, I'm going to do 2 giveaways again. Okay. This way I wasn't prepared. I'm only doing one. I'm going to do one from the App Store and one from the podcast reviews every week. But this week is just from the App Store. This one was from Hutzzie, Hutzzie. You can email me, rich@dynastynerds.com, or hit me up on Twitter @dynastyrich, and I will get your information, and we will email you a shirt or whatever else you would want in that category. So leave us a rating review. We appreciate the support as always. And of course, it wouldn't be Thanksgiving week without a super sweet deal. And we are running right now currently the best deal we've ever run all time on Join the Nerd Herd. You get access to everything we have, whether it be the Dynasty Nerds GM app, which is the best Dynasty app in the world, to the website access to Nerd Score, and of course, more importantly this time of year, the film room, where we have over 500 games of all 22 film on upcoming rookie class. We have so much more film to add as well. We'll get all the bowl games in there as well. So
rebuild episode is a perfect one to talk about that too, because if you're in rebuild already, you're ready for film.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're going to see what we use to break down our rookies, and you'll see why we said not to draft Quentin Johnson, because he can't catch the football if he's not breaking coverage.
I did not see that game last night, but I've heard a lot about it. I saw that he was 0 for 5 and dropped a pretty big one in the
couple.
In the fourth quarter, I think he dropped 3 consecutive.
It was bad.
I mean, I think Ladd McConkey might have caught like the first down for like 15 yards, and then he threw another one to him and dropped it again. But like it was bad.
Yeah,
it was real bad.
That's what I hear.
It's Quentin Johnson now.
But you know what's good? Cyber 40.
Yeah, so the deal right now for 40% off is the best deal we've ever run. It is Cyber
Probably
40.
the best deal we ever will run, honestly.
True. Yep.
Yeah.
Don't wait for I'll wait for a better deal.
No, this is the best deal in 11 years we've ever run. This is the best deal we will ever probably run. Yeah. Cyber 40, sign up for the year.
40 ounces of fun.
And honestly, the price of admission, so you're going to pay like $35, I think, with that deal somewhere on there. And you're getting... That's worth the price of the film room alone. You get the bonus podcast.
Sounds too cheap. I'm taking it off.
It's really the best deal we've literally ever run.
Get it before it's gone.
It's a good deal. So Cyber 40, CYBER 40, for anybody that doesn't know how to spell.
I was waiting for you to spell that incorrectly.
Yeah, so was I.
I'm actually a really good speller.
Are you?
I can't talk well, but I could spell really well.
Interesting.
He's well read.
Look at that. I am a poor speller, but I do well with vocabulary. So it's weird because I can articulate a large word. No idea how to spell it.
You're the epitome of...
It is.
Agreed, by the way. I'm the same way, and so is my son.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. His spelling is terrible.
Is there an E at the end of
Kids
that?
nowadays, they don't need to know how to spell because everything autocorrects because
Right.
they're doing everything on the screen in school and stuff. So there's been some times
Spelling tests are a lot easier.
where I've had him write stuff, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't look right.
That is wrong-o.
So wrong.
That's lick, not like. You can get in big trouble for that one.
So, you guys ready to get into the show?
Yeah, dude, let's do it.
So, how to identify when you need to rebuild your roster, right?
Yep.
And when I said that Cyber 40 deal for the Dynasty GM, that tool is one of the major factors to help you identify that.
It does.
Right? Which is the league analyzer. It's going to show you exactly where you stand in your league and give you a bird's eye view. Because sometimes it's, the worst place to be, we say all the time, is to be stuck in the middle of Dynasty. And it's so easy to get stuck in the middle. And I've mentioned this many times, is because you don't realize it. You think you're a playoff team because you unnaturally, artificially get pushed to the playoffs or close to it, because the teams that are rebuilding are going to lose. Like you'll have 2 to 3 teams trying to lose, which naturally, now you're just competing with only, instead of 6 people for the playoffs, you're only competing for with 3 other people to try and make the playoffs, because that's the way it is. So the number one thing to realize when to rebuild is looking at your team from a bird's eye view and where do you stand in your league. Do you have a chance to win within the next couple of years of your league, right? We say live in this 2 to 3 year window. So do you have a legit chance? Are you close to it? Or is your team too old?
And the nice part about the GM, if you have it, and if you don't, there's other ways to do it, but it's so much more time intensive and labor intensive, and you're still just trusting your opinion versus a more objective opinion. But you can go in there right away, and we have the contender rankings. And that's the best way for me to be able to look at a team that's in 6th place right now. If I go on there in a contender, and basically it's saying redraft rest of season, that's basically what it's saying. Redraft rest of season, this is how good your players are compared to your opponent's players. That's basically what it's telling you. So if you go in there and you're in 2nd place, despite being in 6th place in record, you're saying, man, I must have probably had some bad luck, but my players are on the come up or getting healthy or whatever. Now I'm in a good spot. Sometimes you could be in the opposite spot where you're like, I'm in 4th, but only because I've gotten lucky a couple times, and you look at it on there and you're like, actually contender wise, I'm 10th right now. I just lost a couple big pieces, and Stephon Diggs and Dak Prescott and some other pieces, and I won enough early on in the season to make the playoffs, but like my team is not really a contender right now. And so maybe you don't make a bunch of extra trading of your draft picks and stuff like that in that scenario, because your odds of actually winning are probably pretty low.
Yep.
Yeah, and you get to identify all those aspects, right? Like, are you where you are because of injuries, right? Like, is your team really good and you just have one of those years where, like, hey, you had some really bad, your points against, like, you had the third most points in the league, but you had the worst points against, right? Like, that happens a lot. I've been in leagues multiple times where I had the most points in the league, and I've missed the playoffs because my points against were ridiculous. So that could be a factor. There's so many different factors of, like, when to navigate that blow up and how to go about doing it. And the biggest thing is just realizing when can you no longer compete for a title. And it's
not just make the playoffs.
Yeah, compete for a title.
There's a difference.
And that honestly, that goes outside of your team as well, right? Like, you have to identify what's the hurdle in front of you. Because if you have a few teams that are powerhouses and your team's good on paper, but their teams are powerhouses,
right,
like,
it might be time for a total rebuild at that point, right?
To reset, let their team get a little bit older. You have some really good assets on your team to sell off to help that
draft
rebuild.
Capital, young players,
or pivot and try and find a chance to overcome and beat them as well. So to identify those moments, it does take a deep look outside of just your own team as well, and how to get in there. Make sure you're not stuck in the middle. Make sure you just don't have a playoff team and not there's a difference between a playoff team and a championship caliber team. Definitely if you play in a league, a 12-man league, and 6 teams make the playoffs, right? That's half the league.
Half the league. Absolutely. And I think there's a big difference, too, between rebuilding, and sometimes you don't need to fully rebuild, even if you're missing the playoffs. Sometimes, like, going back to the Nerd Herd show that we did this past week, we were looking at one of my teams, and I have some assets that I could sell, a J.K. Dobbins, a A.J. Brown, a Terry McLaurin, some guys that on the surface are like, yeah, these, if I'm not making the playoffs, which I'm not in this league, good time to maybe sell. But when we looked at the rest of my team, it's like, well, you've got 3 first-round picks already next year, and one of those is going to be a top 3 pick. So chances are you're going to be in a good spot. And points-wise, I'm more like 5th or 6th in the league in points. And it was just one of those situations where it's like, maybe I don't need to rebuild. Maybe I just need to reload. So maybe I look at my team and I'm not going to make a bunch of deadline moves, because I think now that once all these draft picks come in here, whether I draft them or use them to trade for other players, that'll be that little push I need to kind of get me over that hump.
And another thing I think that's important is looking at your team and then knowing what's coming ahead, right? What's coming down the pipelines.
Yeah.
Like for instance, I'm in a league. It's the one that me and Rich kind of both missed the playoffs, but both of our teams are pretty good. We've talked about it a little bit in the past few weeks. I've got older wide receivers, but my running backs are kind of the issue. I'm good at quarterbacks. I'm good at tight end. Mm-hmm. I have older wide receivers, and my running backs just kind of didn't perform this year, right? Sure. So I'm not going to blow up this whole team. I have like the 3rd or 4th most points. I'm just happen to be in a position where I'm probably gonna be drafting 3rd or 4th in that next year, which is perfect. I mean, this is a perfect scenario, and I've got multiple.
And it's a 1 QB league.
It's a 1 QB league. I've got multiple picks in the 1st and 2nd round this year. Multiple picks in the 1st and 2nd round for like years to come. So I'm not gonna blow that team up. I'm just gonna let the process happen towards the end of this year, and then come next year, I'm gonna load up on the running backs, because I know this is a running back heavy draft coming up now. So I'll just be able to get right back right back to where I thought I was going to be at the beginning of the season. Then some things just didn't fall my way. So that's when you rebuild versus reload, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good way to look at that too. When you said hey, I might need to reload, because sometimes like those off years are a blessed disguise, right? Like you have a decent team, but it puts you in a position to get a high draft pick. And the first thing you would want to do is like offload some of those running backs where Matt his running back situation fell apart. But sometimes you want to like push that to the forefront, right? Like, okay, I had Rashid Rice go down, I had Nico Collins go down, and I had Ayuk go down, right? Like my team, like I like my receivers, but right now, like I ain't gonna win anything. And that's okay, because like it's just not my year. It's gonna happen to everybody when they play Dynasty. And it's like, all right, well, how do I know it's for Matt, for this example, like know what's coming down the pipeline. We know it's a strong running back class. Okay, I'm going to trade this running back off my roster. He's a solid running back, but I'll replace him next year with a fresh leg running back. And by doing so, get him off my roster will help me lose and push me more to the top of that class. Because that's what you're trying to do as well in those off years is how do I put my team in position to get the highest draft pick possible? Because I know I have injuries. It's going to push me down naturally, but my team's also decent. I need to move a couple pieces where you're not necessarily rebuilding, but you're going to replenish, right?
And that's exactly what
replace that player. So
I moved a Cooper Kupp and I moved an Austin Eckler. Two guys that at the end of the season here could push me up to a couple of W's and kind of move up my draft spot in the wrong way. You know what I mean? You're going instead of going closer to the top, you're going closer to the middle, and you get future assets. Right now, I'm good. I have older wide receivers. The only way I would move them to somebody as a contender was if I'm getting like a young wide receiver back, because I know it's not going to be a great draft for wide receivers next year, right? So I'm gonna try to focus almost solely on running back. I mean, if a good wide receiver comes, if they drop, I'm still going to pick them up.
Yeah, and there's definitely some players in the class. It's not devoid of wide receiver talent, but you're right. It's much more of a running back class.
And you have to identify, and that's why you want to like make moves like that as well, and identify the positions that you want to move. Like for example, for a team where I wanted to lose, I flipped when he got hurt. I flipped Kenneth Walker for Rashee Rice. I remember that a couple of while ago because I knew, hey, Kenneth Walker's going to help me win. I don't want to do that. I really like Rashee Rice down the road. I will use getting Kenneth Walker off my team will now push me up to a higher draft pick, and then I have Rashee Rice in the wings, which is perfect. You know, identifying those kind of scenarios to do just that, which is again. So when you want to rebuild, you need to also when you do it, you want to make sure like if possible. Sometimes you're going to find a situation where like the trades just won't go through, right?
It happens.
You can't make a trade. You're offering, like you, for example, you have A.J. Brown, right? You're trying to get the value for A.J. Brown, but you're just not getting the right value back. So you're like, okay, well, that's going to put a hindrance in my rebuild. Now I have to make sure then I'll hold on to him. What can I do just to better my team going forward? Because sometimes what you have to do is you have to identify, hey, if I blow this up, I don't want to blow it up into a position where like, okay, I just have my first next year. I get one player. Yeah. And then the following year, I have my first. I just get one player. It's the slowest part of the rebuild.
Takes forever.
When you decide to blow it up, we've talked about this before in the past. When you got to blow it up, you have to blow it up. And that means nothing's left. Like when people say like, well, I have like, let's say even a guy like Malik Neighbors. I'm trying to think who's a hot rookie right now. Like,
yeah, Malik Neighbors, Lad McConkey.
Some of those lines like, oh, those are young cornerstone players. True, but you need multiple picks in here.
One asset is not going to make the difference.
It's not going to make a difference. So any kind of asset set you have on there that could get you multiple picks in return, you're trying to accumulate many draft picks as possible. And whether it be seconds and first. So, I mean, and you do want to identify on second and first. Like that's where the gravy is. We talked about it in a recent episode, those second round picks, 17% chance of being rosterable.
Yeah. And third round, you can flush it down the toilet. It's 6% chance roughly.
So using the right tools, listen to podcasts. The Dynasty Gem is built just for this. That's going to help you identify when you need to rebuild because you got to see if you could compete long term or not. It's easy to say, oh, I have an old team, I need to blow it up. Sometimes it's about having just a right piece at the right time, identifying those pieces as well, and the players, right? Like who's succeeding right now, who's not. Oh, Juwan Jennings is hot right now. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Yep. We're going to talk about him later. I mentioned Juwan Jennings, Cortland Sutton. Just finding these pieces that come in and sometimes just get him off your roster and get as much draft capital as possible. And again, this all sounds like common sense, right? Like, this is just chalk talk. Like, of course that's what it means. But sometimes it's just hard for people to implement. And sometimes it's hard to find the right trade partners as well. Again, the GM will help you identify that in the league analyzer as well. So when it is time to do that, when's the right time to trade and how to value those draft picks, right? During the rebuild and reload.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge part of this. And if you're in rebuild right now, this is arguably the cheapest time to get draft picks because those contending teams, they're not worried about 2025 and 2026. They don't care about that right now. They're saying, man, I'm at 7-4 right now, or I'm at, whatever. They're right there. I'm right in between kind of being a real contender and just
they're getting tunnel vision, and they should.
As they should.
Yep.
You gotta win. Like you gotta, and so now all of a sudden, the Juwan Jennings on your team, is
starting to look good,
worth a little bit more. All of a sudden,
Jameis Winston's in Superflex worth a little bit more.
Yep, and even the older running backs that nobody wanted during the season, now all of a sudden, Joe Mixon looks pretty good. Like all these guys are looking better and better, and they're going to pay a lot more.
I mean, I put out a message today. I updated my trade bait, and I have Ayuk, and I need a running back. You know what I mean? I don't need one. I want one as kind of a backup going into the
third
playoffs.
running back.
And I wrote a little message like, hey, Ayuk's on the thing. I don't want to give him up, but I will. And running backs 26 plus are welcome at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they are. I need somebody.
I would love an Alvin Kamara right now.
I need somebody that is going to score me points and be a consistent somebody that's giving me consistent output from the running back position. And I'll pay Brandon Ayuk. You know what I mean? Like I'll give up this guy who's going to be in a great situation next year where all the talk is Debo's going to be gone, and this guy's going to come back and be in a pretty good situation. And I'm willing to do that in order to secure that position for the playoffs. And it's the tunnel vision. I'm starting to like, who's going to help me right now? What players can help me? How do I get the most players into this little playoff run?
And as a rebuilder, that's to your advantage because there's anywhere from 3 to 6 teams that are doing that right now. Some of them kind of trick themselves into thinking they're true contenders. So that's why I say up to 6, but there's, 3 to 6 teams typically in your league that are thinking they're true contenders. And so you have 6 options potentially available to you to make some major moves. So especially if you can start a bidding war, because that I've seen that happen in other leagues too, where nobody's biting on trades until one guy finally makes the jump.
Yep.
And they just added Derrick Henry to their team. I got to counter Derrick Henry now. So I got to go get Jonathan Taylor from this team, and I got to go get Joe Mixon from that team. And I got to
listen. There was a kind of a 2-prong kind of effect that I wanted to put out there. I wanted to put out that I need this position, right?
Yeah.
But I also wanted to raise the bar for everyone else that was maybe going to get a cheap running back.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, nope. Now they got to give something else. You know what I mean? It's going to be Ayuk. It's going to be a first. I know you are.
And I thought I was like, and I'm a contender in that league as well. And I'm like, because I scored the most points this week too.
Ew.
I have Saquon.
Yeah,
helps.
Saquon. Yeah.
That does not hurt.
And I was like, oh man, and I need receivers in that league. And I was like, I had a way that when I saw it come through this morning, I was like, is it worth me offering J.K. Dobbins? Like, can I afford that loss to give him J.K. Dobbins to get Brandon Ayuk? And I was like, no, I got to try. This is my last window to win it. And I was like, I can't help him but in all, like that trade helps me long term.
Sure.
But again, I'm with Matt. I have this tunnel vision where like, okay, that helps me long term, but I don't care about long term when you're in a championship window. I'm going to. Again, we're going into week 13. Like Matt said, tunnel vision. Yeah. That's the look right now.
You can't afford to make that move, and I would have accepted it, but
sure,
you can't afford to make that move. You've got Saquon, who he's having the berserker year that he's having. You can't move on from that. You know what I mean?
We talked about it on our show. We did a rebook. That's a team we broke down as the original Dynasty League, and we're saying, wow, your receivers are just okay, but you have Joe Mixon. Right. Saquon Barkley and George Kittle. Like that's your offset key to win. That's my chance to win.
And those guys are having their best years in like a long time. So like just ride those guys out and hope that you don't want to be subtracting anything from that team right now.
And if you're wanting more specifics on like how to value the draft picks, go back to an episode that we did a few weeks ago when we literally broke down the hit rate odds of those first round picks, because that'll also kind of clue you in on, yes, I want draft picks, but do I want them in certain areas? Yeah. Or how much should I be valuing them knowing that, here it's only a 50% hit rate, or here it's only, so go back and listen to that episode. I think that's a really helpful tool. But similar to what I think we said it last week, at the end of the day, all said and done, asset or a pick is only worth whatever the person's willing to pay for it.
Right.
So don't consider that gospel truth as far as, well, this is the price, and if this isn't the price, then I can't do it. Nope. Prices are going to vary and fluctuate a lot by league. And right now is when you hold the contender's feet to the fire and say, like, you want this asset? Okay. What do you say? Yesterday's price isn't today's price.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Sorry.
Absolutely. And I had an owner where like he offered me a first, and we were talking about it. That's all that all came up to for Joe Mixon. I was like, absolutely not, dude. Like, I don't want pick 12 or pick 11 for Joe Mixon to help you win. Like, I'm not here to help you win. And that's how Matt made that comment. And then he literally tried to, I think on Sunday, send another offer, and he added a third to the deal after a minute. I'm like, no even response, just instant decline. So when it comes to like how to trade and how to value draft picks, right? So when I mentioned earlier, hey, it's really hard to do when you just have that one first, right? Like it's really hard to do. And sometimes you might find that position, right? You weren't able to offload the players that you wanted to for future firsts. All you got was a whole bunch of seconds and thirds. And that's the way your roster was constructed or the way your league was set up and you couldn't find trade partners. Because it's hard. Like you have to find trade partners. Like we say all the time on Twitter, like people are like, oh, that value is worth this and that value is worth that. Like, okay, well you need like, oh, you should have traded for this player when you could never trade for that player. The best thing to do when you're in that situation as well is when you're in a full rebuild, a true rebuild, you're not just reloading, and you finish with the first overall pick, the second overall pick, and definitely in a draft class like this, where, like, say the number one overall player is a running back, for example. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't want, like, that is a negative asset on your roster because the running back's going to be the shortest lifespan that you're going to have and the last thing you want to add. The most important thing to do when you find yourself in that position, come draft week or leading up to the draft, your pick just gets more valuable every single week. What you want to do then as well is you want to trade out of that pick, right? Like, and I'm not saying out of the draft altogether, but
trade back to pick 3.
You're trading back to pick 3, pick 4, pick 5, somewhere. Like you want to stay in the top 6 for sure, but you want to trade back and pick up additional draft picks. Say for a guy like Ashton Denty and somebody really needs a running back, they have pick 1-5.
They're going to pay a lot.
They fell in a situation where like Matt is, right? Like he's 1-3. You might be able to get 1-4, 2-4, and a first next year for that player.
And maybe more. Honestly, with a young running back that's looked at as highly as he is, like, you know, if you were to go after, like, his price range is probably right below, like, Bijan, Gibbs, Achane, and Bryce. Like, right now, I have him 5th. If he were to go to, like, the Cowboys, the Chargers, one of these good landing spots in the first round, he would probably instantly catapult to, like, probably around 5th in my dynasty running back ranking. So, I mean, think about how much you're going to have to pay. They're going to pony up. And that gives you a bunch of options to get quarterbacks, receivers, all that through the draft.
And if future draft picks aren't there, it's also another perfect opportunity to excel the rebuild with a proven asset. So you move down to 1-4. Hey, I'll give you 1-1. Give me 1-4 and Jaden Reed. Give me Rashee Rice. Give me Brandon Ayuk in 1-4.
Or maybe even some of these players we have in the players to target here.
Yeah. So like it's a perfect opportunity to add to your team, whether it be draft picks or other players by moving back. But like anytime I'm in a complete rebuild, I need multiple assets. Like that one pick, which is already, no matter how sure he may seem, is a gamble no matter what. Sure. Not a for sure thing. You want to move off of that, get extra draft capital or an extra pick and a proven player. And sometimes it might just be a proven player that you like, right? Like somebody's like, hey, I need a running back. I'll give you Malik Neighbors. Okay, cool.
Sounds good.
Along those lines. So it's important to value those picks and be flexible, be expendable. Everything must go, right? Like when you're rebuilding, like you have to be a very fluid owner. Like you're just trying to get as much
value
as you can in the shortest span as possible because you want to flip this within 2 to 3 years. Like it's usually a 2 to 3 year window.
Yeah. At the most, I really don't want to go past 2 years of being terrible.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah. And you have to, so that means you have to utilize like those picks to make yourself better. If you can't flip players, because sometimes you can't flip players. Like we've talked about this on the Nerds show. So you have to be able to move off your draft pick and identify players that you want. Like Matt did it this year, like a lot, where you identified Xavier Legette as somebody who you really wanted. So you were very fluid in moving off of your pick.
Absolutely.
And move back 5 spots to get the player that you identified where most wouldn't have had him ranked that high.
Sure.
Like Ladd McConkey would have been that guy for me this year, right? Like, hey, I really want Ladd McConkey. I like Odunze, but I also love Ladd McConkey. I know I can move out of 1-4 to 1-11, get Ladd McConkey, and possibly get a first plus next year, right? Yeah. So, and then when it worked out, all of a sudden, now you have Ladd McConkey, who's producing more than Rome Odunze, which, again, I don't mean that to like he's a better player than Rome. Yeah. It's a long way to go here.
But he's playing well.
I got to prove a player that I liked who is playing well. Now, of course, it could have been Xavier Worthy, and you're in a different spot. But I also have the extra draft capital to offset that gamble. More bullets in the chamber, more shots you get to take. Yep. More shots you're going to take, the better chance you're going to hit your target.
And that strategy doesn't work in every year's draft, right? I mean, you have to be able to identify guys and see the discrepancy that you have versus the ADP, everyone else out there, in order to kind of identify those guys. They don't always it doesn't always happen. So, I mean, don't always use
Sometimes
that
you'll trade back and he gets picked one pick before you.
Right.
Said, I traded back one pick too far. Yep. You know, like that happens.
But then you could luck into a guy like Bo Nix in Superflex,
yep,
right? Like
absolutely. Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, scooping him up as value. Yep. And listen, everything we're talking about too, this is like a rough, listen, we're doing a 45-minute podcast today. This is a rough guidance. It takes work, right? Yes. The people that stay stagnant get passed up. If you want to win in Dynasty, this is not redraft. The more time that you put in, the better your odds are going to be. So it takes work. You have to go through your league, identify your league. You have to put a ton of time into the rookie class, right? That's why we have the film room. That's why we have the Dynasty GM. You have to put in the work. And the reason we built the GM in the first place was to expedite all of this, to make your life easier, to cut off tens of hours, if not more, into your process, right? Like we try to take all the money that we get from the Nerd Herd and put it back into our tools to expedite the process of you winning a championship, right? For not just contenders, but more importantly, when you're rebuilding, the draft is a huge part of that. So you have to put the time in to identify all this, get a feel for your league, see what trades are available, keep working at those trades, keep pounding out the details to make your team better, because you have about 2 years to do it.
Yep, absolutely. We've one of the things that we wanted to touch on quickly is, we do want to go after draft picks. That's the biggest thing. But sometimes there's good player values to target. Sure. So if you're trading an A.J. Brown, you're trading a Tyreek Hill, sometimes you can just go from that player to a younger player or a different player and a draft asset, and you can split them up into multiple assets to give yourself a better chance to win. So I listed a few guys here. I don't know if you have any other players that you guys liked. These were some that I identified that are not going to be stupid expensive right now, that might be good rebuild targets, because contending teams probably aren't looking at these as pieces to help them win a ship right now. So these guys might be players that are available. So I don't know if there's any that you guys identify with more than others, but the one for me that's the biggest one, you already brought up the name, Rich, is Odunze for me right now. Odunze is showing so many signs of potentially being a very, very good wide receiver. The thing that we're missing is the actual production that goes with that. Like, it's just not all coming together right now. Caleb Williams has decided to continue on this roller coaster. And so we talked about how bad it started, and then he's looking really good and then really bad again. And then his best game of the season this week. So it's a true rookie roller coaster with Caleb Williams, but at least we're seeing some of the signs. But Odunze, right now, 12th in targets in the NFL since week 8. So the past 5 weeks, he's been getting the looks. However, he's only 34th in points in that span due to him not scoring a single touchdown in that 5-week stretch. So he's not really helping owners right now. The wide receiver 36 right now is not helping contending teams. They're looking for, I want wide receiver 2s in my wide receiver 3 spots because that's how I'm getting ahead. So this is somebody that could potentially be available to a rebuilding team if you have DeAndre Hopkins plus. And it would have to be a pretty big plus. But
this is 100% the most expensive asset you put on here.
Probably.
He's still a high name.
The last one's pretty high too.
Yeah. Well, he's going to be the high. Actually, he's the most in Superflex. Yeah. But Rome, you got to remember, Rome kind of got pushed down in this process a little bit because how deep the running back class was, or the quarterback class was, Brock Bowers, and the multiple quarterbacks there. So there's a chance that Rome did go to someone that could have flipped it around as a contender. Somebody was in that 5, 6. Yeah. A lot of times Rome went like 7 or 8. In some drafts, just because how deep this class was. So he is obtainable, but I'm willing, as a rebuild player, willing to overpay for this. This is a prime example for how weak this wide receiver class is. Where in a week, I'm just saying for superstar talent, if you have pick 3 and a DeAndre Hopkins, right? Hey man, I know you need some wide receiver help. I'm gonna give you DeAndre Hopkins. I'll give you Cortland Sutton. Plot Cortland Sutton, and we'll talk about him tomorrow's episode, so I don't get too detailed about the stats.
Maybe Terry McLaurin.
For Rome. Plus, my first and your first, flip first. I'll take your first, but I'll give you 1-3. Something along those lines. Just because now you're getting a cornerstone potential player here. Yep. Where at 1-3, you're more likely going to take there's going to be more. It's a real deep running back class. So you're going to Luther Burden, Tat McMillan, but you're really excited about a guy like Odunze, who was just a highly touted prospect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I love Rome in that capacity because obviously we talk about it all the time. You want to be targeting these guys that had really high draft status, but maybe didn't produce to their expectations as quickly in year one. We always talk about targeting those guys. So I think Rome Odunze just drops right into that, kind of time, or not time frame, but the model that we have there. Another guy that I don't know that, because of the position, if it's quite as applicable, but Jaylen Wright is a guy that for me, you don't love targeting running backs in a rebuild, but for me, I think he's a guy that you can get for cheap now because he's doing next to nothing. But
fumbling.
You're right. He's doing next to nothing, but he shows flashes here and there, and he'll always have a nice play. He's just not getting a ton of volume either. Sure. So next year, I think he's going to be in a better situation. So even if it's a situation where you get Jaylen Wright in a trade now, and you don't even see him as a long-term asset for your team, but maybe next year when he's producing, you then sell him again.
Yeah. Or if you're more of a reload team more than a rebuild team.
I think he could be a nice little fit as a player to target here towards the end of the season. Because he's also not helping any contender.
Nope.
No contender whatsoever. And he fits that mold. I mentioned, you guys kind of pooped on me a little bit, like Bryce Young. I was like, I'm still buying Bryce Young. You're like, no way. I'm like, because he's so dirt cheap right now, but he's out. And I was like, at least he's showed some promise. And here we are again. Another week, he looked pretty good. Could have been his best game yet.
Yeah.
Listen,
it's best game yet. 13 points.
But
he played well against Kansas City. I will give you that.
And what I think is he secured himself a spot for
next year.
And
we mentioned that on the injury show. I think he's played well enough that he's going to get next year.
So you don't think if they're in the top 5, which they are right now, you don't think they take a quarterback?
No, they have too many holes. And I don't think this quarterback's strong. I think they're in a situation like the Bears where there's a strong quarterback there, possibly. But I think
we'll see. I don't feel that confident about that.
The Giants and the Raiders are ahead of them right now. So again, we'll see. But
this was not this regime's quarterback. Every regime gets their own quarterback. If they're in the top 5, I'd have a hard time seeing them pass.
What I was going to say about Bryce Young too is he's a great those are kind of pieces you can get as for dirt cheap when you're a rebuild that it's worth a chance on. Right? It's not costing you much. So for 2-1, right, in a running back heavy class, hey man, I'll give you 2-1 for my second round pick, which is going to be 2-1. Some people looking to offload a guy like Bryce Young. When you're a rebuild team, those are kind of players that's worth the gamble on. Again, it's another piece. You're getting a quarterback in Superflex. It's the most important piece for 2-1, where you're likely going to take, the 4th best receiver, the 8th best running back. You get the number 1 overall pick. Again, chances of pan out, not great. But if he can just become the starter for a couple of years, he's a viable piece on your roster.
Sure. 2 other quarterbacks, potential targets. Drake May, he's going to be the most expensive
good luck,
of this group. But a contending team might say he's doing okay, but he's still not getting me the points I need. So you might have a shot to say hey, I'll give you Jared Goff plus, or I'll give you, somebody in the Tua plus, something like that.
To get Drake May because I've been
not hard enough. You had an offer, not hard enough.
People are valuing it. I've been going back with Tyler Gunther, and he wanted pretty much valuing him for Pat Mahomes straight up, and I'm like, I can't do that, buddy.
Yeah.
So he's gonna be the most expensive. Anthony Richardson's another.
Anthony Richardson's an interesting one. Yep.
Who's probably one who's only 22 years old. Way more obtainable if somebody's not out.
Than Drake May, yep.
Who's been up, who's been down, still has some accuracy issues out there, but he's got work through them. But since week 11.
Yeah. I mean, in week 11, he had 21.8 points, so he had a great week last week. This week, the points dropped, but lots of reasons why that happened. There was a drop TD in the game, incomplete 30-yard pass to Ashton Doolin, the last Pioneer, down the sideline where he stepped out of bounds, unfortunately. Gains of 30, multiple long gains that got called back due to penalty, and they were going up against the Lions, which is not the easiest team ever. So there were still a lot of signs in that game to tell me they're he's making progress. He's doing some of the necessary things. Last guy I had on my list, and this is the cheapest acquisition of the group, but I do think it's an interesting one. Cade Stover, he had his highest target total game. Now it's only 4. It's nothing crazy, but 4 targets in this game. But more has to do with Dalton Schultz for me. This team next year, 7th least cap space in 2025. And I mean, Dalton Schultz doesn't even have a touchdown this year. So he's not contributed much to this offense this year. And if they were to do a post-June 1st cut, it would only cost the team $2.5 million in dead cap in 25 and 26. So with them being closer to the cap, I could see him being a potential cap casualty at some point, and them moving on from him, especially if they're not getting the production that they want. Cade Stover seems to be ascending. So he's kind of one of those cheaper, like throw-in guys on a rebuild deal that I'm like, hey, can you throw Cade Stover on and to sweeten the pot? Like he's one of those kind of players.
And I think that's exactly what he is. And I do see it the same way. I think he's going to be the long-term answer there. I think Schultz is going to kind of phase out as Cade phases in. So even if they don't get rid of him, I don't know what was his cap number supposed to be? You said next year 2.5 or no?
If they do a post June 1st cut, it's 2.5 and 26 and 25 and 26.
Okay, I'm just I don't know if it'll be worth the squeeze quite yet. You know what I mean? I feel like Cade Stover might be a guy that needs a couple years.
Yeah, I think they owe him like 11 or something this year.
He's a 3-year window guy, but
we'll see.
It's about tight end is the easiest window to get ahead of, right? Because like Cade Stover would be very obtainable this offseason, and his value isn't until 2026 anyways.
Probably
so
yep.
It's good like to get ahead of that before people start seeing that value come into fruition. So again, all this is made easiest by just joining the Nerd Herd. It really is. The tools that you need, the podcast that you need, the film that you need. And right now with that promo code Cyber40, you'll never have a cheaper opportunity to get it. You're going to invest about $30 into that. That's literally less than the price of a soda at McDonald's.
$30?
For over the price of a year.
Oh, yes.
Buying
I was like, dang.
That's
price a jumbo cola.
The price that you go in to buy a fancy water or the price of a soda will give you all the tools that you need to help navigate your path to a championship. Because it's on you. Like we're out here, we're talking, but every league's specific, and we try to build tools that are literally specific to your leagues, right? You can import all your leagues into the Dynasty GM. So it's on you to do the work. We'll help guide you. We'll give you our opinions, but it's on you to make those final decisions. We are just analysts that, study the game a ton and give you our opinions, who just happen to be right more than we're wrong. But again, we will be wrong. It's everybody's wrong.
It happens.
So Cyber40 is that code. Get in there, join the Herd today. You won't regret it. This is going to give you a full year, right? You got to imagine if you join now, you're going to get the full year. You're going to get the off season with all the extra rookie content, the Dynasty Nerds film room, the summer stuff, and then getting right through all regular of next season as well. You'll see that this is the best investment you ever made for your Dynasty team, and hopefully, which was what we think, is you'll stick around for the long term. Everybody who's in the Nerd Herd's been here for a very long time. Yep. They understand the value of it. We offer what other websites, what other tools do not offer. Get in the Nerd Herd, Cyber40, gobble, gobble, gobble. We'll be back tomorrow talking more Dynasty Fantasy Football.
Adios.
Hey, Nerd Herd. Dynasty Nerds has an incredible new offer from Underdog Fantasy for new customers. When you sign up as a new customer, you'll get a chance at their new customer free pick. But that's not all. Underdog is also offering incredible deposit bonuses. Use the promo code NERDS when you first sign up, and Underdog will give you up to $1,000 in bonus cash with your first deposit. That's right, $1,000 to kickstart your fantasy football journey. Don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Sign up today with promo code NERDS and start your journey to fantasy football glory today. Must be 18, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. And in Tennessee, call 1-800-889-9789.